All right, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Mann. I'm the Director of Programs and Institutes at the Catholic Information Center. The ministry of the center creates spaces for encounter, dialogue, and community at the intersection of faith and life. As we continue, let's do so in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Loving God, you have said to your people, I have loved you. Before we act, before we speak, before we decide, we are held in your love. Open our hearts today to recognize your image in every person, in those who struggle to make ends meet, in those whose voices go unheard, in our neighbors we may not yet know. Form in us a deeper awareness that the gifts of this world are meant for all, and that the resources we share are entrusted to us for the sake of the common good. Give us the courage to ask honest questions, to listen to one another's stories with compassion, and to seek not only what is efficient or profitable, but what is just and life-giving. Help us to see clearly who benefits, who is left out, and how we are called to respond. May your love move us from reflection to action, from concern to solidarity, from isolation to shared responsibility. As we begin this conversation today, guide our minds, steady our voices, strengthen our commitment to build a community where all can flourish. We ask this in the spirit of your abiding love of your Son, the Lord Jesus, who lives and reigns with you in communion with the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen. So I want to briefly share why this conversation matters, especially to the Catholic Information Center, and especially for those of us shaped by faith. What we are about to discuss, taxes, public investment, housing, childcare, economic priorities, is not only a civic or a political issue, for us it's a moral issue. And within the Catholic tradition, we have a rich body of teaching that helps guide us how we think about things and these questions. It's called Catholic social teaching, Catholic social doctrine. At its core is a simple but powerful belief that every person has inherent dignity, made in the image of God. That dignity isn't abstract. It has real implications. It means that people should be able to live with stability, support their families, participate fully in society. This leads us to another key principle, the common good. Catholic teaching reminds us that our social systems, especially things like public budgets and taxes and tax policy, should be organized so that everyone can flourish, not just a small number of people who have influence or the resources. The Church also speaks about the preferential option for the poor, which means that when decisions are made, the needs of those who are struggling to make ends meet should come first. And it emphasizes participation, that all of us have both the right and responsibility to shape the society that we want to live in. So as we move through today's presentation, we're not just analyzing policies or projects here at the local level of Grand Rapids. We're asking deeper questions. Who benefits? Who is left out? Are we truly using our shared resources in a way that reflects human dignity and serves the common good? In many ways, this work is not separate from our faith. It is a concrete way of living it out. And for us, being that we create these spaces at the intersection of faith and life, that's what makes this conversation today important. I'd like to welcome Bob Sadowski, longtime friend of the Catholic Information Center, and represents the Cathedral of St. Andrew in their work at Together West Michigan. He and his wife, Mary, are Dominican associates affiliated with Grand Rapids Dominican Sisters and reside here in Grand Rapids. Please help me welcome Bob Sadowski.
Thank you. Just a few words for those of you who don't know much about Together West Michigan. Together West Michigan is a broad-based organizing group that is composed of 25 currently 25 member institutions We are nonpartisan. We do not endorse any party or any candidate. We like to say we have no permanent allies and no permanent enemies. Rather, we will work with anyone who is willing to work with us on the issues that are important to us. And what we try to do is we try to build bridges through relationships across the lines that divide us in community very often. And in doing so, organizing people and organizing our money, trying to build some power so that the needs and concerns of ordinary people can be heard at the tables where decisions are made. So that's just a little bit about who Together West Michigan is. We've been learning a lot about what it means to have power in political decisions. We are organizing people and organizing money so our voice will be heard and respected by the decision makers in both our county and our city. In January, we started a new listening campaign talking to over 1,000 people about what some of their issues are, and this presentation was a part of that. And we're continuing to do it because we continue to want to hear what people are thinking, what your issues are, as well as trying to enlist your help if you're interested in supporting the issues that we have heard already. And what are we hearing? We're hearing that it's hard to find good paying jobs. It's hard to find affordable housing. Prices for food and healthcare and childcare continue to climb. Many of our neighbors are feeling threatened by detention and deportation. Others are heartbroken by community violence. And with all the cuts in federal spending, there doesn't seem to be enough resources to meet the need. And now here is, I hit the right button? Thank you. It's the arrow, right? Did I hit?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. So here is the story of something that is common to what we've been hearing.
Our members have some priorities for public money.
So I did everything they told me to do. I worked hard, I got good grades, I went to college, and I took every opportunity to give back to my community. I did everything right. But despite all of that, despite all of my effort, I cannot afford to live in this city. 5 years ago, I moved into an apartment that cost $1,100 a month. 3 years later, the rent jumped up by $700. More than half of my paycheck was going just to keep a roof over my head. I worked harder and longer, but prices kept rising. I looked for cheaper housing, but there was nothing. The only reason I was able to survive was because my sister was in the same situation and she moved in with us. And then we had a friend who was also in the same situation and moved in with us with her 2 children. We became a huge family, sharing a space just to make sure our kids had enough to eat, and we had to make impossible choices every month between paying for rent and providing food. We are asking you, as our city council, to listen, to act, to invest in all of us so that we can build a city where hard work and dedication actually pays off.
We know that
Hold on.
Yeah, we know that Satori isn't alone in her questions and her frustration. United Way has been keeping track of U.S. household income and has found that 41% of the households in Michigan are working but cannot afford to make ends meet. And they refer to these neighbors as ALICE, asset limited, income constrained, employed people who can't make ends meet. If you take a look at the slide, you see that in 2010, $30,000 was the poverty line, $50,000 was working, but finding it hard to make ends meet. By 2023, the poverty line stayed basically the same, but the cost to make ends meet had jumped to $70,000. Now, if you're paying $2,000 a month for rent, that's $24,000 right there. We're paying some of that in taxes. If you got a clunker of a car Every now and then, you're going to have to chunk some money in the car. You've got food, you've got healthcare, you've got, childcare. You've got all those things that you have to deal with. If you had asked me when I was in college, $70,000 enough to live on, I would have been like, whoa, it's Party City. No, no, it's $70,000 in today's market is tough. In fact, in Kent County, more than 1 out of 3 people fall into the category of working full-time and not being able to make ends meet. So I want to ask, and I'll ask Mark to go around with the microphone. Do any of you have any experience of either yourself or know people who have these kinds of issues, who have these kinds of problems? I see some people nodding.
Yeah. Any comments?
There's their hand back there.
All my children just cannot afford to live, cannot afford housing. I just read that Old Kent, or not Old Kent, what is it? Fifth Third just built all these apartments, and I had to read the whole article to get to the bottom what the price was, and it was 1-bedroom apartments, $1,500 to $2,500 a month. That's ridiculous. I mean, how can you live? I mean, you can't afford an apartment.
You can't. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Anyone else have a story they'd like to share? I saw you nodding, Chris.
No,
You're just being supportive. Anyone else? Nancy.
little grandsons, ages 4 and 2. And I often will go to they go to the play groups that are sponsored through the city. And some of the parents there and then some of the kids. And then I sometimes volunteer at St. Gianna's. And I see some of the parents who come to the play groups with their kids coming to St. Gianna's for the free diapers and the free clothing because they can't make ends meet with childcare, with healthcare, and all of those other things. There's a little bit of a embarrassment at having to do that, but they have to take care of their kids and their families.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. These types of stories are exactly the reason why we're here today. A few people seem to be getting what they want, while more and more of us can't afford what we need. So we have 3 goals that we're going to try to do today. Should I be pointing this over here?
Oh, there. Sorry. No, sorry. That's now give it a go.
Okay. We have 3 goals for today. One is to learn about tax incentives. Some of you may already know a lot about this, but most of us just kind of know the phrase. So make sure we're all on the same page about tax incentives. We're going to evaluate our current tax usage and prepare for the 2026 elections. Taxes belong to the public and for the common good. That's our claim. Taxes are public money. The taxes we pay belong to the public, are for the common good. They're an investment we make to provide the things that we'll all benefit from. But Together West Michigan has found out over the last few years that our elected officials don't always make decisions that benefit all of us. In our interactions with the county commission and the city commission, we continue to find that there are a few voices working behind the scenes to get what they want, and their priorities don't match up with ours to get what they need. So too often, what a few people want takes precedence over what most of us need. And here's another example of that, a story.
Together West Michigan's first listening campaign in 2022 reveal widespread childcare issues, with families paying mortgage-level childcare costs, leaving jobs, and some childcare workers needing multiple jobs to make ends meet.
So in 2024, we advocated to increase Kent County's early childhood millage, the Ready by 5 millage, which was up for a renewal in order to fund quality childcare.
At the same time, county commissioners were asked to consider a hotel motel tax increase to fund a new Grand Rapids amenities like a soccer stadium and amphitheater.
Studies showed a desperate need for affordable, quality child care in Kent County.
I have heard from folks in this room and beyond that more study is required before this action can be taken, and I have to disagree. The Illinois State Facilities Fund released a report specifically about Kent County in October 23, showing that our county is 20,500 slots short of spaces for ages 0 to 5. The Michigan Chamber of Commerce study released last year shows that a lack of childcare costs our state $2 billion in economic activity a year, and that it called for action. The Kent County Big Sort, led by the county administrator last year with over 100 local experts, ranked childcare as the top concern, not just now, but for 25 years to come. This is a legacy-making issue. The studies are clear, they're real, and they are actionable. They're right here.
Publicly, county commissioners said that pandemic interference with Ready by 5 programs meant the community needed more time to evaluate their effectiveness before increasing funding. Despite 76% public support for an early childhood millage increase and over 200 residents coming to the commission meetings in support. Privately, commissioners expressed concerns about putting 2 tax increases on the ballot in an election year and how that could influence candidate campaigns.
The whole system is on the verge of collapse from multiple angles. An expansion of the Ready by 5 millage would allow voters to choose to put additional money to help fund this broken system that's the foundation of our entire economy. But again and again, both publicly and privately, you've said no. Commissioners, we're not in the midst of a sports stadium crisis. We're not in the midst of a music venue crisis, but we are in a childcare crisis, and we need you to check your priorities. Together West Michigan is not against more and better downtown development. We are for economic development and the well-being of families and children.
So, despite the fact that they had all these studies, the commissioners, county commissioners basically said, well, you know, the pandemic in 2020 robbed us of a year of data, so we can't make this decision. However, 14,000 families have been served by Ready by 5. Almost $9 million raised, and it costs homeowners only $3 per month on average. And they were asking to double the millage, which is, as you know, a property tax increase of $3 a month. So for an extra $36 a year, you know, we could have raised another $9 million to help with childcare. And even though we had the studies and the stories and the room, the county commission didn't listen to us. They wouldn't even put it on the ballot to let the public decide. As you heard, they had something else in mind. And these are pictures of the downtown amphitheater and the soccer stadium now being constructed in Grand Rapids. You see how expensive they are, and you can see that they required public funding. Kent County has borrowed $127 million to pay for these developments. And they decided to pay for some of it by using an increase in the hotel tax from 5% to 8%. Since people who come to use hotels in town usually are coming from out of town, they figure, well, this way we're getting money from visitors and we're not, charging too much for the average person. As you heard, they didn't want to put two tax possibilities on the ballot at the same time. And why? Because they thought it would hurt their chances of being reelected. Even though we said, but you're not actually going to increase the taxes, you're asking the public if they're willing to do it themselves. Give them the choice, give them the ability to choose whether they want to do this or not. But our voices were ignored. So the question is, well, then whose voices were they listening to? Even though no one we talked to, of the 1,000 or so people we talked to, said, I really need a soccer stadium, or I really need a new amphitheater. Our elected officials believe that our taxes were better spent on the downtown development. Now, as they said, Together West Michigan has nothing against good development, but where are our priorities? Who's paying for what? Who's getting what they want? What most of us needed was set aside in favor of what a few people wanted. And in addition, we started to recognize the role that the tax incentives were playing in the transformation of our city. And we didn't like what we were seeing in that. Okay. One more time. So what are tax incentives? Remember the claim we started with? Taxes are public money meant for the public good. We know that the government is supposed to use our tax money to provide goods and services, but they can also be used another way. Sometimes when the government wants to encourage certain types of behaviors, they give tax credits or incentives, like the earned income tax credit or the child care tax credit, for example. Credits support people who are having children, getting an education. It's the government's way of saying we want to encourage these things. Society is better when people have children, better when they get an education. So let's give them some help to do these things. So incentives do the same thing. They put more money in people's hands. Now we see tax credits and tax deductions in our personal finances, but this happens on a larger scale as well with incentives for large development projects. And the same tension we felt with the county commission would come up again at the city commission. What a few people wanted seemed to take priority over what most of the rest of us actually need. And there's another video coming. Right. It's easier to give a heads up that way.
Ultimately, the commission voted 11-10 against voters getting the chance to increase the early childhood millage, sticking with a straight renewal instead. They voted overwhelmingly to put the lodging tax increase for a soccer stadium and amphitheater on the ballot.
But something shifted. One commissioner crossed party lines to vote in favor of increasing the early childhood millage, and the renewal passed by landslide. The conversation about childcare in our county changed, putting children and families in the spotlight.
Later in 2024, the same interest behind the stadium and amphitheater proposed a transformational development in downtown Grand Rapids, 3 luxury towers of a hotel, condo, and office space. Developers asked for a $500 million tax break, money that would otherwise go to the city-state budget for public good and services to reimburse themselves 76% of the cost of building the privately owned development.
In exchange, the developer was required to include an affordable housing component. The public soon learned, however, that instead of including an affordable housing in the 3 towers, the developer was only willing to provide $8.5 million in affordable housing funds to build that housing somewhere else. And that 8.5 million would be spread over 20 years. That's just 425,000 a year for affordable housing in exchange of a 565 million taxpayer subsidy.
Our members were outraged. We met with city commissioners and the developer liaison asking for clarity on the return on investment for taxpayers. Commissioners were uninformed, and the developer was evasive, saying the numbers wouldn't work for a larger affordable housing contribution. Our key question about this transformational project was, transformational for whom? The developer's response? Transformational for the land it will be on.
Mm-hmm. So this is a rendering of the transformational project. You've probably heard about the 3 towers. And while it looks really nice, Aaron's question is an important one. Transformational for whom? The 3 towers will now be built with one of the largest tax incentives in the state of Michigan right now. It's called the Transformational Brownfield Plan. The state of Michigan wants abandoned properties to be turned into something more useful. So they created the Transformational Brownfield Fund to encourage people to build. Now here's one catch. In order to take advantage of this plan, one must have access to at least $100 million. So your average person trying to develop the land or having plans for the land or a nonprofit pretty much scooched out of that. Who gets to decide what is useful? Well, those who have an extra $100 million laying around. One could say they're the wealthy. It's a very small group of people who gets to decide what is beneficial or transformational. And in this case, 2 wealthy families, whom I will not name, want to build a luxury hotel rooms, condos, and apartments, and offices and 3 towers along the river. So even though thousands of people were saying they needed more affordable childcare, more affordable housing, the city commissioners chose to devote public money to what just a few people wanted. And as you heard, it's not a small amount of money either. Now, I have to say, not to defend the city commissioners, but to give you the overall view, they didn't know the details of this until a few months before they had to vote on it themselves. All of this was cooked up between the developers and some employees of the city who were appointed, not even elected. And they worked together on this for a couple of years in back rooms. And then the commissioners, the council people saw it at the same time that we saw it. So by that point, everything was already baked into the pie. It was estimated that the cost of this project would be close to $800 million. And the amount they'd be receiving in subsidies was over $500 million. Actually closer to 600 than 500. So in other words, our tax money is going to cover 2/3 of the cost and will do so for families whose net worth are in the billions. So our question in Together West Michigan is, why should we be covering the cost for something they can afford on their own? Now, it's important to note that in order to receive the full amount tax benefit, as you heard, there must be an affordable housing component. However, the law does not say how much. It's a judgment call that each city has to make, what's fair. And we believe that the city commission did not use good judgment in accepting the offer. I mean, $8.5 million spread over 30 years is, and to be built somewhere else. We don't know who's going to build it, where they're going to build it, how they're going to build it, but supposedly that would be about 1 house a year for the next 30 years. This is not going to make a dent in the need for affordable housing. So, and for that matter, we don't know at the present moment how we can be sure that they actually will be built. Because whenever we asked for details, they were like, oh, this is proprietary information. You can't find out. So we can't find out what our tax money is actually paying for. So as we said earlier, what we're trying to change is the way in which our elected officials are making decisions based on what a small group of people want as opposed to what most of us need. No one in our meetings were crying out for more downtown development or luxury condos. They were looking for childcare and affordable housing and better jobs. We were able to have some influence. We got one no vote out of the city commissioners. But as I said, the decisions were already made before we even heard about the deal, before we got to the table. The cake was baked. And this is what we want to change. We want to be in the kitchen before the next decisions are made. And here's another video.
We turned out hundreds of people at the commission meeting calling for a better deal for the public. 6 of the 7 commissioners sided with the big money interest and voted the $500 million tax break through without more affordable housing.
But it wasn't business as usual. The conversation changed from rubber stamping another development to a real conversation about the public benefit for our public investment. And the developer raised their goal for contracts in the project for minority and micro local businesses from $31 million to $50 million.
The question, transformational for whom, keeps us up at night. When it comes to our public money, especially in development, who benefits and who decides?
More development that will ask for our public money is already being discussed. An aquarium, a publicly funded hotel at the DeVos Convention Center, and raising the cap on the same enormous tax incentive program that's going to be used for the 3 towers, the Transformational Brownfield Program.
Those are all things the local officials we elect will vote on. Will they make decisions that reflect our priorities or someone else's? That depends on us.
So again, Together West Michigan isn't necessarily opposed to downtown development, but we do believe that the agreements could be designed in a way that is more beneficial to the average community, to the common good. That's what Catholic social teaching is all about, the common good. So that's why, Javier, it's up to us. And one of the books that we read in doing research was by Norton Garfinkel, The American Dream versus the Gospel of Wealth, the fight for a productive middle-class economy. And he said there are 3 important questions to ask about the use of our tax money. First is, does it actually work, all these incentives? Secondly, is it fair? And thirdly, will it sustain the democratic structure of our society? And when we examine the developments in light of these questions, we have some serious reservations, especially if it means that our priorities are being put on hold. So let's try to answer these 3 questions. First, making sense of incentives. To answer this question, does it work? We interviewed Dr. Timothy Bartik, the senior economist with the Upjohn Institute and author of Making Sense of Incentives. So the reason why elected officials get so excited about these big developments is they say, well, it's going to result in more jobs, more money for the city, more money for the county. And, I hear those things, then I say, well, that sounds like a good idea. I mean, you get a new soccer stadium or a new amphitheater, new high rises, someone has to work there. Think of the money it'll bring in. And while this sounds good, research has shown that these developments overpromise and underdeliver. Studies show, for example, that the jobs rarely go to those who most need them, especially if those jobs require some kind of training or education. Majority of jobs go to people who are already working or to people from outside the area who travel in. And sometimes, many times, money and jobs move from one part of the city to another part. For example, from 28th Street to downtown. So rather than creating new jobs and new money, the gains you see is simply a shift. Gains in downtown could be canceled by losses in other places. Then there's the added costs of the developments themselves. There's more wear and tear on the roads. There's greater demand on city services. There's more police presence required at local events. And normally there would be new taxes that would cover those added costs. But when for the next 30 years, all of the taxes go back to the private developers, someone else will have to pay those taxes. And when I say the taxes are going back, I'm talking about anybody who's living and working there, their city and state income tax and their property tax for the next 30 years is all going back to the private developers. Now, all the added costs that the city is going to have for services to all these people and businesses, it's going to have to come from somewhere. Someone's going to have to pay for them. Who is it most likely to be? I think it's us. You could argue that maybe, but I think that's the likely possibility. And there are other costs as well. Cost of living is going to go up. The cost of parking will increase. I don't know if you heard when Lionel Richie was here. Parking spots were going for $50, $60 for the night. I mean, that's New York City money. That's not Grand Rapids money, but that's what's being charged. New developments like this have proven to make it more expensive for people who already live here to stay here, and it becomes more expensive just to visit here. So if we live in a city and a county where more and more people are already stressed and strapped, remember that Alice thing, 1 out of 3 people barely making it. What's going to happen when the stress becomes even greater? Who are these developments really for? Who is it transforming? That's why Dr. Burtick says incentives like this don't make sense. And he says most of the time a development of some kind is going to happen anyway. If the city commission had said no to this project, we wouldn't be stuck with an empty parking lot for forever. We would have gotten someone to do something else even without incentives, or for much smaller incentives. These incentives only put more money in the hands of people who already have plenty and do very little for those who need it the most. So Dr. Bartik says, if you really want to make a difference in distressed places, what's the most effective development? Surprise, childcare, and job skills training. If we want to make our taxes work for the common good, these are the types of investments our city commissioners should be making and the agreements they should be negotiating. As for the big tax incentives, they look good, but over the long haul, they do not work. And if you doubt that, there we go. 10 years after a damning Forbes report, has Grand Rapids improved for Black residents? 10 years ago, well, in 2015.
I'm sorry. Please.
Oh, I'm sorry. 10 years ago, in 2015, Forbes ranked Grand Rapids the second worst large U.S. metro area for Black people to prosper. Black residents say they feel flickers of hope, but also frustration with big gaps in income, home ownership, and business ownership that haven't closed. Grand Rapids unveiled their GR Forward Plan in 2015. It was the city's master plan. Part of the plan was about reactivating the riverfront, and our elected officials have ensured that progress was made these last 10 years. You can see the buildings going up, but what else has been happening? In 2015, the Forbes magazine indicated Grand Rapids was 49th out of 50 in large metro areas when it came to income levels, home and business ownership for Black residents. And recently, a 10-year review of the report showed Grand Rapids has made no real progress. So let's let that sink in. City staff, elected officials, private developers 10 years ago knew their racial inequality was a serious problem in the city, but we have done nothing about it. Not because we didn't have the time or the energy or the money, but because we had different priorities. And this is where I believe Catholic social teaching calls us to step forward. They've put the priority on big development projects rather than the people of the city. And in that, asking the question, does this seem fair? We have to say, no, it doesn't. And this is certainly not what we're called to as Catholics following Catholic social teaching. Undocumented immigrants pay more of their income in state and local taxes than the richest 1%, percentage-wise. Undocumented, and it's 8% of the money they make gets paid back into state and local taxes. Whereas the top 1%, 5.4% of their income goes back to state and local taxes. So that seems kind of strange. Immigrants in Kent County pay $266.3 million in federal taxes and $142 million in state and local taxes, which is less than the richest 1% pay. Our undocumented neighbors contribute more of their income to our public good than the wealthiest neighbors, and they get none of the benefits because they're not documented. They can't ask for any kind of benefits. And to make matters worse, part of those federal taxes are then turned back around to separate those same immigrant families. So while developers cry they absolutely must have more tax breaks to build their buildings, our undocumented neighbors are in tears because they can't even feel safe in their own homes. And so we ask, well, what's fair about this? Housing Kent is an organization that's working to increase access to affordable housing, to dissolve homelessness, and to eliminate racial disparities in Kent County housing system. And I have two graphs to show you that shows what's been happening over Kent County over the last 10 to 15 years. Kent County used to be a place where people made enough money to afford to rent or buy a home. You take a look at the graph. The affordability threshold is right there. And what was the median wage? Well, back in 2013, the median wage was 58% above the income needed to afford an entry-level home. By 2017, it was equal. In 2022, median wage was 31% below the income needed to buy an entry-level home. And a big part of that is because the cost of homes keep going up, but wages don't. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the Grand Rapids, Wyoming area is the most unequal metro area in the state of Michigan. Out of over 900 similar areas measured in the country, Grand Rapids ranks as the 47th most unequal. These tax incentives that go to the wealthy few only make it worse. Now, okay, so you're not going to buy a house, you're just going to rent. How does that look? Well, back in 2012, the median wage was 18% above the income needed to afford rent and utilities. By 2019, it was equal to the income needed. By 2022, it was 11% below the income needed. So I think it's pretty clear that using public money for what a few people want rather than most of us need is unfair. We have real needs when it comes to affordable housing. And so what these last three slides show is that while city staff and private developers have been planning new projects that a few people want, they've been neglecting what most of us need. They've been neglecting inequality, neglecting affordability, neglecting basic upkeep to city infrastructure, and that neglect does real damage. Here's one more story and an invitation.
And I looked outdoors and it's like Noah's Ark.
This was the scene that Tom Sciarrino found outside his home on Allerton Avenue early Thursday morning. A main break at the corner of Adams and Philadelphia here on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. The evidence of what had happened was everywhere. Cars that had been underwater earlier in the day, mud blanketing the street, even a bumper ripped off a car.
Older infrastructure like this, it could be a crack around on a pipe, it could be a longitudinal split. We've seen situations where top sections of pipe have completely blown off as well.
Developing tonight, there is another water main break in the same Grand Rapids neighborhood that had a major break 7 months ago. Now, 12 neighbors have filed a lawsuit against the city for not helping with damages from the break you're looking at last summer, which resulted in flooded basements, mold, sinkholes, and foundation damage. Their insurance will not cover the damages, and the city says it is not responsible for reimbursement of hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage.
When we invest our public money in development, we deserve clear, measurable public benefit that reflect not just the interests of a select few, but all of us.
We're taking the next year to talk with our members and neighbors about that and what their priorities are, to build our platform for what the public benefit in return for our public investment should be, and turn our members out to vote based on our priorities in November 2026.
We've gotten a taste of change and we want more. Will you join us?
All right. Oop. There we go. So it seems that a few people get what they want, but most of us struggle to get what we need because we've been on the outside looking in. The last question that Dr. Garfinkel told us to ask is, will it sustain the democratic structure of our society? Now, democracy means that everyone has a voice and that everyone's voice matters. But whenever a few people can get whatever they want and most of us can't get what we need, democracy falters. When some people have way too much and way too many don't have nearly enough, then elected officials only report to a select few. Our voices matter less and less, and our priorities get less and less attention. These big developments were dreamed up by unelected city staff, not even the city commissioners, and unelected developers behind closed doors. They were kept from the public eye for years, from our public officials as well. We finally learned about these projects and we asked for more information. We got turned away. When we asked to see the numbers before the vote was taken, our requests were denied. And even though hundreds of people showed up to say these were bad deals, decisions were made that favored just a few people. And that's not sustainable democracy. The reality is we have been on the outside looking in. We haven't been allowed in the kitchen while the projects were being cooked up. And we realize now we need to be there. We need to be in the kitchen, and we know that we can be. Here's what we've learned through this process. And maybe it's on the next slide. No. Okay. What we've learned through this process is you don't win the fight in the public comment period. It's you have powerful, connected, moneyed interests have the cake baked before the public sees it. We need to be in the kitchen while the cake is being baked if we want to impact the ingredients. We need to work in advance to set the ground rules. And whoever is in the kitchen makes the call on what we really do have money for and what we don't have money for. So change is possible. You've heard how we were able to sway some votes and influence some decisions. And in fact, we heard in January, they're thinking about building another hotel over DeVos, but they haven't. They said they're 2 or 3 years from deciding whether to do it with public money and the city will own it, or whether to go through a private developer. The fact that they're raising this question now and not just telling us about it in 2 or 3 years after the decision's already made shows that we had an impact through the 3 towers. We're going to be talking with them about this over the next few years. We're going to be putting our input in, and we want your input. So with enough organized people, we can change the recipe. But we need more power. More power comes from more people having their voices heard. There's power in numbers, and there's greater power in greater numbers. Together, if we work together, we can change the way that our tax dollars are used so they work for the common good, so that most of us can get what we need rather than a few people getting what they want. And today's conversation is part of that process. You heard Javier say, we've gotten a taste of change and we want more. So my question is, do you want more power in the decisions that are made in the city? Yes, no? Yes, okay. Thank you. I thought maybe you had all fallen asleep. All right. It's time for a new tax dollar recipe. And what do you want to cook up? It's time to stand up and speak out. You heard with the three towers, we only got 8.5 million spread out over 30 years, which we think was offensively low compared to the 560 million that we're giving them. We asked the developers to listen to their better angels and say, we'll give a tithing of 10% to affordable housing. Not surprisingly, used to budge. But it does get us thinking about what we would have done if they had. What would we do if we could change the recipe? What would you do if you had $50 million to spend in Grand Rapids to help Grand Rapids be a better city, a better town, a better neighborhood? Think about the lack, the hunger that you or people you know face right now. How would you meet that need? What would you do to ease their hunger pangs? And then think about the people you love and imagine what we could do for them if we could make those tax dollars work for the common good. Remember Satori's story about how her rent went up from $1,100 to $1,800 overnight, and she had to get 2 other roommates and their kids in order to be able to continue to afford to live. Remember the stories that were mentioned right here about St. Gianna's and high rent. What we're going to do now is turn to one another and share our stories and use those stories to set our priorities when the decisions are made with our tax dollars. So what we're going to do right now for the next 25 minutes is we're going to break up into 4 groups. And we have 4 facilitators here. Bob Enders is one. Tom Sherino, who you just saw on TV, was another. Ted Hartzell, who you've also seen on TV, and me. And we're going to ask everyone to answer this question. If you had $50 million, what are the needs that you see in Grand Rapids that you would like to spend that $50 million on? You know, we don't ask you to have a point-by-point plan of exactly how it would all work. But what are the needs? That's the question we want to. What are the needs that weigh you down? What keeps you up at night? Or what keeps the people you know up at night? And we'll do that for about 25 minutes. We want to make sure everybody in each group has a chance to talk. I'll go to that corner over there. Tom, if you go over there, and Bob and Ted are always in these corners. So if you guys could kind of split up, we'll do this. And if you're in Zoom, do we have more than one person in Zoom?
No, but I'll jump on.
Okay,
I've made the
Mark will
offer
be
to jump
the
in.
facilitating Zoom. Ted.
Some point in the next 25 minutes. At some point in the next 25 minutes, may I have about a minute to just update people on where we stand with all this legislation?
Oh, why don't you do that right now?
Okay, so there's an accountability and transparency team, the ANT team, which has been working on talking with our state legislators from Grand Rapids. There are 5 of them. We've talked with 4. We wanted to, we've got a meeting scheduled with Representative Fitzgerald, who's the minority floor leader, because the bill to increase the cap on the transformational brownfield money, which did the 3 towers, 2/3 of that cost, is the House passed it, and the Senate passed it. Now the House, Matt Hall may or may not introduce it. It may happen at this legislative session or may not. And we are just trying to get our foot in the door and say, we want some more public benefit, namely affordable housing. That's one thing. And maybe a community benefits agreement as part of this. So we are trying to, be in there before the cake is baked. And because the cap, all these big developers say, wow, what's happening in Grand Rapids and in Detroit with the Ren Center, whatever, that this is a big pot of money. Let's increase it to 3.4 billion or something like that. Anyway, we're working on trying to influence our local state legislators. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. All right, let's break up into small groups and we'll talk a little bit. What would you do with 50 million? All right. So I'm gonna ask the question now that we've had a chance to talk and our facilitators have had a chance to take some notes on what you said and bring it back to Together West Michigan. We want to move on and ask the question, where do we go from here? There's been a nice discussion, but is that it? Does it just end here? We drop the ball and nothing ever happens? That doesn't do any good, right? We want to build relationships and make some event change. So I have a few things that you can do that if you want to be a part of making change happen. First of all, voting in 2026 and prioritizing how candidates will use public money for the common good. And let me just go through all of these. Help others to get others to vote in 2026. Talk to your friends, talk to your family. And to that end, we have some cards at each table. If you see it, it's mentions public money for the common good. I commit to be a public money for the common good voter by doing the following. And we invite you to fill these cards and give them to us. Voting in 2026 and prioritizing how candidates will use public money for the common good, helping to get others out to vote, and attending the Together West Michigan candidate accountability session hosted by Together West Michigan on Saturday, October 10th at 10 a.m. This is June. How many of you have plans for Saturday, October 10th already? Nobody, right? Nobody's got any plans yet. Put this down on your calendar now and say, I will be there. Because the more people who show, we want to have at least 700 people. And we'd be glad to have close to 1,000 people at Calvin Church. Because the more people who show up, we're going to have candidates who are running for city commissioner, candidates who are running for state rep, state senator. And we're going to be asking them, are you willing to work on the issues with us? And then we're going to hold them accountable. We did this 2 years ago. And we had candidates for the 3rd Ward who said, yes, we will work with you. And we held their feet to the fire. After a while, some of them were like, well, I got other things I got to do. And we're like, you promised you would work with us on safety in the 3rd Ward, particularly on Kalamazoo Avenue. In this year's budget, which was just passed, we got $600,000 committed to putting in a stoplight at Adams and Kalamazoo and crosswalks with flashing lights and everything to help make, because there have been so many people speeding down Kalamazoo. People run into stores and run over pedestrians, and we got them to put $600,000 in the budget because they promised us 2 years ago, election again, and they knew if they didn't get it done, we were going to be holding them accountable, and we were going to be telling our people, they said they'd do this, they didn't do this. It's up to you to decide, are you going to vote for that again, or are you going to vote for somebody else? Well, they got it done. So, power respects power. If we have enough people showing up on October 10th at 10 o'clock and just saying, will you vote, for affordable housing and for childcare and so on and so forth, they're going to see, hey, these are 700 to 1,000 voters out here. I better pay attention to them, because if they all vote for somebody else, I could be in trouble, right? So they want to get elected. They want us to vote for them. We want to have voters there making a difference. So on the back of that card, there's a contact information, your name, email, phone, street address, etc. And I would like more information on, and circle whatever it applies, infrastructure, meaning housing and transportation, immigrant and refugee well-being, policing, particularly police training is something that we're looking into, and childcare and education. If you prefer to do it the more newfangled way of using a QR code, there is a QR code there, and you can just all do it online. If you do it online, please write down, there'll be a space that says, what institution are you with? We ask that you write down the Cathedral of St. Andrew, because that's the institution that's sponsoring the Catholic Information Center. The Catholic Information Center it works with and is a part of. We promised, Together West Michigan, the cathedral did, that we would get at least 75 people to come out to this thing in October. So we want to make sure that as we get a list of names so that we can send you an email to remind you, because, you know, October comes around, you may not remember this all that well. And we want to be able to send you emails saying, don't forget, show up on October 10th. So if you would, fill this out. And we have some extra cards also. I think Tom has some cards. Yeah. So if you have friends and family in Grand Rapids, or the immediate surrounding areas, and you think they would be interested in showing up to this, take some cards for them, or take the QR code and show it around and have them do it on their phones. Whatever it takes. If you bring cards with you and say, I'm dealing with somebody like Bob Sadowski who doesn't even know how to use a phone. I better give him a card that he can fill out by hand, the old school way. Then just bring the cards back here to the Catholic Information Center, and Mark Mann will give me a call every week or two and say, hey, I got another dozen cards for you. Come pick them up, and I'll pick them up and I'll enter them into the spreadsheet. But take the cards, use the QR code, and most of all, put it in your calendar, October 10th at 10 a.m. Be there for the accountability session.
That church went on Apple. Church.
Ted?
Calvin College. It's on Thomas Street.
Yeah, it's off Franklin. Yeah. Oh. Okay. I think that was at Oakdale. Yeah. So we wanted a bigger church this time because we're planning to have a lot more people.
There'll be candidates for more than just the city of Grand Rapids, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so okay.
Yeah, there'll be probably some Wyoming and Kentwood as well.
Last year or 2 years ago. Bob. So we had to go there. State routes. Bob. Not everyone could hear you.
When we did the county accountability in 2024, it included like the mayor, because the mayor's candidates were there. Also the city commissioners, the county commissioners, and also the state. There were some state reps positions I think were open. I can't remember if there was a state senator or not.
So, yeah, Susan.
Also about the session, I think it's good to know we don't let them ramble on. We ask them yes or no questions and keep their feet to the fire.
Yeah, it's not that they get to give their stump speeches. We say, this is our meeting. We're asking you questions, and you just say yes or no. Will you be willing to work with us?
I just want to make a comment on why I joined Together West Michigan, and it is an important group. I was part of that flood that you saw out there, and we had to fight City Hall for almost 2 years. But it was this video and the help of Together West Michigan that finally helped us come to a resolution. We got a check in the mail. We had probably $25,000, $28,000 in damage. We got a check in the mail for about $7,000. So it wasn't what we wanted, but we got something. And with other houses that had up to $80,000 or $90,000 in damage, and they got about 20 to 25% of that. So, and we had a lot of lawyer bills too. But if it wasn't for Together West Michigan, I don't think I would have continued the fight. And so it's really important to get involved in this kind of a group to work on infrastructure and aging issues that we came up with here at our table, a lot of aging issues. We spent the $50 million just the first two people. All right. So we need more money next time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so with that, I'd like to conclude. You know, fill out the cards, say you'll vote in 2026, get other people to vote, and get yourself and other people to the accountability session in October. And we look forward to working with you. If any of you are saying, this is exciting stuff, I want to do more, talk to me or Bob or Tom or Ted afterwards. And if you want to get involved, you can get involved. Even if you're not a member of the Cathedral Parish, anyone is welcome to work with us on Together West Michigan. The only thing is, if when we have our delegate assembly meeting, each institution gets one vote. So, if you're not a member of the Cathedral Parish or Our Lady of Sorrows or St. Joseph the Worker, or someplace like that, we'll still be glad to have you on board working with us. It's just when we take official votes for the direction of the Together West Michigan, it's the institutions that vote, not individuals. But you're always welcome to work with us. We'll be glad to have anybody work on any of those 4 areas that are listed on the back of the card or the front of the card. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we take donations because it costs money.
Other institutions, so other institutions are members or?
Yes, our question is other institutions are members. We have about 25 institutions, probably about 2/3 of them are churches in the area. Then we have like Access of West Michigan, Montessori Bloom. So we have some nonprofits that are also members. And if you belong to, say, a parish or a Christian church or synagogue, and you want to have your parish or Christian church or synagogue come join us, we'd love to dialogue with you and let you know what it is we do in more detail and welcome you aboard. So, if anyone has any questions about that, ask any of the 4 of us. We'd be glad to answer those questions. Bob, something else you want to say? Well, Our Lady of Sorrow, St. Joseph the Worker, Holy Name of Jesus, and St. Dominic, as well as the Cathedral Parish, which was the original Catholic member. And then we have around here, we've got, Westminster Presbyterian, we've got St. Mark's Episcopalian, we've got Park Church.
I think it's important to note that we gained 5 members in 2025. We set a goal of 5 for 25 and made that. And I think we actually have 27.
27 total.
2 of them are now either formal members or about to be, including Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church on Franklin, which is a dynamic, Black church and we have First Community AME, another Black church. We've got an African church, Restoration Community, which meets in a former Methodist. So you can, like Bob said, you can only be voting member if you're an institution. That's 1% of your operating budget per year. But we can cut deals with churches that are struggling.
All right. So any final questions or comments? Otherwise, we're going to break up so we can enjoy this wonderful box lunch that Mark has personally prepared for us, right? Mark?
Bob, thank you so much. Thank you for the good work that Together West Michigan is doing. Yeah, and you can find more information about Together West Michigan on their website. Again, this is a community organizing initiative. It is getting to know your neighbors, finding out what the common needs are that need to be addressed in the upcoming year or focus. There's 4 priorities currently for Together West Michigan. They are part of the legacy of what is the IAF, Industrial Areas Foundation, which was started in Chicago, and it was started with not just Catholic, but Christian churches in the Chicago area, and has now since then become a national movement. It really is about a movement, right? About community mobilizing, community organizing. Yeah, sure.
One other thing I just thought of that this group might be impressed with is that the Southwest chapters of the IAF down in San Antonio, Texas, were invited not once, but twice to the Vatican to meet with Pope Francis, because he was so impressed with how they were living out Catholic social teaching of the principles of subsidiarity, doing things at the local level rather than from the top down, bringing things from the bottom up grassroots movement. He was so impressed that he asked them to come back a second time and update him on their work. So that's just to let you know, I'm not just saying this is Catholic social teaching. Pope Francis thought so too.
Great. Bob, thanks again. And thanks to all of you for attending today. I want to give a special thank you to our program team, the 55+ program team. If you could raise your hands, Chris and Rob and Nancy, Marge and Marge, or Marges, Leslie, Tom, and Mary. So thank you. And we've been meeting and planning for the fall. We don't have an exact date. We know what we're doing on October 10th, right? But in October, well, in September, this whole year is the year of St. Francis. And so we're going to be doing a reflection on the life of St. Francis and what his legacy means for us today. That'll be September, our kickoff event. In October, we're going to talk about living out various Catholic spiritualities and have a panel of Paulist associates, Carmelites, Franciscans, Dominicans, but all lay people affiliated with those religious orders and what those charisms look like in the world today. And then in November, we're busy working on planning a conference, Aging Faithfully, which will be a little different format for us. We're going to meet on a Saturday. It'll be an all-day conference, and we hope you'll help us get the word out for that. Right now, we're looking at probably the second Saturday of November, which I believe is someone can correct me, but the 10th here at the Diocese Center. But that would be open to anyone who wants to explore what aging faithfully looks like. Everyone's welcome to attend. So, and we'll have all of those details on our website in the coming month, and you'll be able to, and we'll make sure all of you get in the loop, in the communication loop. Again, thanks for joining us this morning. We're so grateful that you're willing to take a step in faith with us in your faith journey. We're a resource to lay Catholics and those wishing to learn more about this way of life. As the Catholic Information Center, we envision a vibrant, inclusive, and welcoming church where the loving and merciful face of Christ is made visible to all. We welcome your feedback and further questions. We have evaluation forms on the table and ask that you just take a few moments to fill those out. Thanks too for joining us online, and I've posted in the chat a link to the evaluation form as well. All right.